Hi, my name is Mike Messier. I am guest hosting the Doomer Bloomer podcast. This is the podcast that's hosted and produced by William Summer, a good friend of mine. I was a guest on the show last summer, and right now I have Darryl Lovegrove all the way from Australia. How are you today, Darryl?
Hey, really well, Mike. Hi, everybody. G'day from Sydney, Australia.
I've heard a lot about Sydney, Australia. I've heard it's a beautiful area. Were you born there? Is that where you've spent most of your life, Darryl? Or
No,
tell me about that.
I'm a Kiwi. I was born across the Tasman Sea, just off the coast of Australia. There, you go. Look on the map, and on the right hand side, the east coast of Australia is where the major cities are, including Sydney. And then you keep on going to the right, to the east, and you hit New Zealand. And that's I was born and raised in Auckland, New Zealand. But I came to Australia as a 21-year-old because I auditioned for Les Miserables in the late 80s, and I got in. And so they flew me across to Sydney, and I've pretty much been here ever since.
Darryl, here's the bio, folks, on darryllovegrove.com. I'm going to spell that DARRYLLOVEGROVE.com. Darryl Lovegrove is a showman, an award winning performer, and producer of some of the biggest and most popular corporate entertainment shows in Australia. As a performer, he has starred in shows like Les Mis, Chess, and Jesus Christ Superstar. He has shared the stage with talent as diverse as Sarah Brightman, Jimmy Barnes, Glenn Shorrock, if I'm saying that right,
Yeah,
or
Little River Band. Yeah.
yeah, okay, nice. And the Wiggles, very popular band. I saw a YouTube video about the Wiggles and how one of the guys was struggling with health issues. Really inspirational. That
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
he just loved to perform and he wouldn't be kept off the stage.
that's right.
I've got to ask you about Chess because this I saw the musical Chess on a videotape. It was a videotape performance of Chess. I don't know if it was the performance you were in or not, but the song "One Night in Bangkok" by Murray Head. If people remember that song, they may not realize that Chess is a whole blown musical. "One Night in Bangkok" is in it. Darryl, just as a thing for my own satisfaction, tell me about your role in the musical Chess, where this was performed, when was this
This is the
about?
original. This is the original Australian cast. Again, 1990, I think, a long time ago now. And I was understudying the American, the Freddie Trumper. It's the coming together of world championship of chess in Bangkok. You got the Russian who's turned up with the American, and Freddie Trumper is the American guy, and the Anatoly is the Russian guy, and it's a fantastic show, especially people who perform it claim it. You know that most musical theatre performers, many of them, would say chess is probably one of their favourite top three or top five to perform. It probably hasn't done the box office. It hasn't done the box office of the Phantom of the Operas or the Les Mis or Cats or whatever. But as far as a performance point of view, we love doing it. It's just such a great rock opera. Yeah. Chat
I
was
would hope that there's a TV series.
Queen's Gambit.
Go ahead.
Are you talking about Queen's Gambit,
Yeah,
the TV series?
yeah,
It is brilliant.
right. And what my thought, yeah, my thought is that perhaps with Queen's Gambit being so popular, maybe there'd be a resurgence of interest in more chess work
Oh, there has
and
been.
something
There has
like
been.
Chess the musical.
Oh, there
Yeah.
has been. Queen's Gambit
Do you play?
I did at the time. I totally got into the game. I still play it now and then, but it's very hard to find other people who play it. So, so
Yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely got into it at the time.
I love chess. It's like you're right. Sometimes I'll go years without finding an opponent, but when I do, we'll play a bunch of games, and it's just a great game. And it's
Mm.
kind of like you can a lot of. Can you? Would you agree that there's some life lessons to be learned in playing chess, Daryl?
Gosh, life lessons. Yeah, I suppose there is. Yes, there is. Um, Conflict, your war gaming, your strategies, your bluffing. There's yes, I suppose there is. Yep, yep, definitely. Fascinating game. It's a great
And when
story
you're
too.
making
The
moves,
actual musical.
you're making you're making moves like pawn sacrifices, and sometimes you're trading a queen for a bishop or whatever for this. It's really a game that I think that if you teach a kid how to play chess, and I'm grateful for my dad, he taught me to play, I think when I was in the second or third grade. It's so much easier to learn stuff like that, or a foreign language when you're a kid. When you get to be older, it's harder to learn things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I love the fact you can play computer games. It's a game you can, but even back in the 80s, you could buy these games that you played the computer. You did its move, you did your move, and you pressed it down, and you could actually play the computer over like a 10 grades. It's got even more sophisticated now. And in fact, you can't beat the latest one out. It played the world champion about, what was it, 8 years ago, and it beat the world champion. So it's but
Wow.
the fact that you don't have to, you can just play a computer is pretty cool too. You know.
And people should know, Daryl, that you are a multifaceted guy. You're also an author. And I'm looking at the title of your book here, and the cover is a really nice photograph. Forward by Sir Tim Rice, Darryl Lovegrove's
Tim
Why
Rice
Haven't I?
wrote chess. Yeah, Tim Rice actually wrote chess. So
He wrote the
yeah.
musical chess?
he
Wow.
he wrote the words. He wrote the words with Benny and Bjorn from ABBA, who did the music. And of course, Tim Rice was also the lyricist from Jesus Christ Superstar and
Wow.
Evita and The Lion King, and a whole bunch of others. So yeah, I got to know Tim during the 90s when I was playing Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar throughout Australia and New Zealand. And we became good mates. And I went over to England when I set up something we'll probably be talking about in a little while, this act called The Three Waiters, which is talked a lot about it in my book. And I play cricket with his cricket team, and he booked the show quite a few times as well for his friends. And one of the biggest shows we ever did was for him at the Dorchester Hotel in London. Yeah, so he's good. He's a good mate, and he very kindly offered to do the foreword for the book.
That's going to make you feel good as the author of Why Haven't I Heard of You? A Blueprint for Standing Out in a Crowded, Crazy, Changing New World. To have a gentleman who you've worked with, who you respect, and
Mm.
high credentials. I mean, ABBA, Dancing Queen, unbelievable talent with that band. I always think of ABBA as the less um, dramatic, behind the scenes version of Fleetwood Mac. You know what I mean? Like kind of a did they have a couple of couples? Wasn't
Yeah,
ABBA consisted of two couples in the band?
yeah, it was, yeah,
But they seemed to get along better than the Fleetwood Mac, which always had this infighting. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. It still does, I believe.
And this is great. And you've in 2020 you finally found the time to write your first book, and I can relate to that because it's when we got hit by these worldwide circumstances, and suddenly everything that as an entertainer, as an actor, as a public speaker, the things that you are so used to doing for your income and your life, and how you connect with people and how you reach people, that they had to be put on pause for a while, and
Oh
you
yeah.
took that time to write your book. Can you tell me about when it occurred to you? Was it after the worldwide situation happened that you said, okay, now is the time to write the book? Were you already in the process of writing the book when
That's
that
exactly
happened?
what happened. That's exactly what happened. When February, March in 2020, we all remember it. I was, gosh, my company was going great. We had gigs lined up, and I was just about to actually hop on a cruise ship and do a month going around Western Mexico and San Diego with one of my acts. We were going to have a great time, and we had a lot of work with a number of my acts around Australia. And we had to get our head around all of a sudden that the whole thing was cancelled. Everything was cancelled all around us and was just going crazy. And I sat at home for a little while and thought, what the hell am I going to do? And luckily, and this is something I always say to aspiring performers, is please, for God's sake, follow your dream. But in the world of performing, you're going to be out of work more than you're going to be in work. So have something to fall back on. There's no such thing as the 0.1 of 1%ers of the world who can, the movie stars and the rock stars, the ones who have already made massive income. And that they are literally 0.001 of 1%. The rest of the people who are successful in the entertainment world, don't earn that kind of money, but they're successful. They do stuff, but there's still going to be a lot of times when they're just not working. And so one of the things I was really happy about was I got a teaching degree when I first left school. I listened to my grandparents, and my parents said, "You must get a degree," and lucky I did that. So I was able to fall back on that, and I really enjoyed getting back in the classroom. But I realized, gosh, in the evenings, I've got to write this book that everyone tells me I need to write, because for years and years, especially since I've been on the keynote speaking circuit, people have been saying, that's an incredible story. You need to write a book. You need to write a book. And do you have a CD? And so during that COVID, those COVID months down here in Australia, which were the lockdown was the March and April, May. I wrote the book and recorded a CD, and so that was a fantastic use of time. And all of the content that I had mulling my head just fell out onto the page. And I'm really proud of this book. I think it's a personal development book. It's a business book, and from someone who can walk the talk, really, building businesses up overseas, of being in the world of theatre, and all the trials and tribulations which go with that are sort of entrepreneurial lifestyle, risk taking, all those sorts of things, and continually meeting difficult situations which you just have to overcome. And so it's a book about resilience. It's a book about purpose and taking action and focus. And that's what I tried to do, and it's going very well.
Darryl, let me ask you. I've got a bunch of questions that came to mind as you were speaking. Here's the first one. What was your childhood like? How would you describe that?
It was a fantastic childhood. My first years of my life, when I was 7 months old, my father worked in Malawi, Eastern Africa, as a lecturer of law, and helping out with sort of setting up law practices in Blantyre, at the University of Blantyre there in Malawi. And then when I was about 3 years old, we moved to Geneva in Switzerland. Dad got a job working for the United Nations law office and a law relations office. And so I went to school there as a 4-year-old in Geneva. My brother was born there. When I was about 5.5, Mum and Dad split up, and my brother and I came back to Auckland and with Mum. And Dad went on to live in Hong Kong for 10 years, and we would go and visit him twice a year from New Zealand. So I had an extraordinary, I grew up in an African sort of village, really, for my first 3 years. And the next 3 years I was in a European hotspot in Geneva, and with everything that goes with that. And then back in New Zealand, but I also had the Asian kind of cultural thing going on when I was a youngster, sort of from 10 to 16, consistently going over there and being immersed in that whole incredible city that Hong Kong was in those days. So I'm very rich, and I went to boarding school for 8 years in Auckland, and eventually then got my degree and came to Australia as a 21-year-old aspiring actor.
With those, even at a young age, you probably traveled more than many people did their whole lives. By the time you were 9 or 10 years old, do you feel that diversity in childhood experiences helped you with your performances on stage?
I suppose I think it's helped me enormously in a number of ways. Did it help me as an actor on stage? I'm not sure about that, but certainly in my life mindset, it has enormously. I've always been a curious kid, and curiosity is, I just think, the most important thing. Curiosity is so undervalued. People don't even understand what you mean by it. What do you mean being curious? And you either kind of are or you aren't. I think inherently, I think you can become more curious if you put your mind to it. But curiosity is just this never-ending appetite to find out what the hell this is all about, and to really embrace the massively wonderful different cultures that are out there, and to learn empathy, and to learn understanding of where other people are coming from. Um, I've been to over probably 50 countries, and I mean, even in the United States, I've been to 26 of your states. So I've done a hell of a lot of travel over the years, and most of the continents, and I can never get enough of it. Always love traveling, and love seeing how other people do it. And I'm one of those guys who don't stay in the hotels. I get out and really like to walk the streets and find out what and eat not eat at the main places, but eat the little tiny nooks and little restaurants that the locals eat at, so I can get a good idea of what it's like. Beijing and Shanghai. The first time I was there, I wanted to go deep into the city,
Yes.
way away from the hotel, and learn what actually people do every day, and where the supermarkets they go to, and look at their products on the supermarket shelves, and go into the little funny little places to eat, and eat things that I've never seen before, and all that kind of stuff. I love that thing, and I think that is a result of seeing a lot of the world, um, and really understanding that we're all sharing it. There's this whole thing of so and so being superior to someone else is ridiculous. Ideas and the just choices we make. There's certainly superior choices and inferior choices people make, but as actually the who we are, in our individual racial makeup, we're all in this together, and we've got to look after each other.
Well, that's true. And if there, I mean, what you just said, we've got to look after each other. If ever there was a time to be grateful, for me, to the healthcare industry, the doctors, the nurses, the EMTs, the people that have probably gotten very little sleep over the last 2 years or so, because their profession has just been really superhero status for all those folks who work in the medical industry, because they've been taking care of us. And you know not to, I don't consider it a political thing, but for me, that's why I was very happy to go get the vaccinations for this pandemic, because I wanted to, yeah, I didn't want to be a part of the problem. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be
Mm,
another person in a hospital bed when some kid with cancer or some person with leukemia or somebody needed that hospital bed. I didn't want Mike Messier taking up the spot because I didn't want to
yeah,
get a vaccine. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
good on you. I'm getting my first jab next week, and I should be fully vaccinated by September the 2nd. You've got to do it, people. You've got to do it. Anybody sitting there going and thinking, oh, these conspiracy theories, it's so pathetic. You've got to stop it, and just get out and get immunized, because and I'm really pleased to see that there's this move saying, well, if you don't get immunized, you're just not going to can't go to the theater, you can't fly, you can't not going to be able to do just normal things. And I'm totally for that. We don't have to pay anybody any money to do it. You just have to threaten them, say, look, it's fine if you want to be recalcitrant and think you're smarter than everybody else and not get immunized. You're going to be, as you say, Mike, you're going to be part of the problem, and you're just not going to be welcome in areas of where there's public, sports centers or the theaters. You just can't go. That's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, I just had a normal and thank you for your patience, because we had a little bit of here at the Doomer Bloomer podcast. Guest host Mike Messier taking over for Will Summer this week, the producer of the show. Because of the time differences, we had a little confusion. I actually had a doctor's appointment this morning. Um, that's why we were doing this morning for me, which is like the middle of the night for you. So my doctor, I just had a regular checkup, Darryl, and he told me that the doctors here are getting nervous. Like the medical industry here is nervous because of this. They don't have beds for people, and like I said, not to
Mm.
beat this soapbox anymore, but if you're on the look, there's some people that just aren't going to get the vaccine. They're just not going to do it. But if you're an on the fencer, if you're kind of wavering and you're still open to influence and opinion, take it from Darryl and Mike, please, by all means. Now is your time to be part of the solution and help this thing. and let's get through this thing so we can get back to life. One of my great pleasures, Darryl, is seeing live theater. That's why I'm pretty intrigued, and I'm spending a lot of time talking about your theater performances. I'm an actor myself, an acting coach. One of the things you were talking about, um, I guess I'd like to expand upon and explore a little bit with you. It's not easy being an actor. And a couple of weeks ago, I'm in the local coffee house, and a friend of mine who hangs out at the coffee house, he's a good guy. He's about 35 years old. He works in the prison system. He's a prison security guard, and
Oh
he's
yeah,
doing, something like you'd see on the TV show Oz. Is what I always think of. Oh, he's actually doing the cavity searches of the inmates, and he's checking
yeah,
their things and all this intense stuff. And this guy, tells me he sees what I'm doing with the computers, and I've always got a stack of scripts, and sometimes I'm doing podcast stuff from the coffee house, and he tells me that he wants to be an actor, and I said, okay, we'll sit down, and I
yeah,
basically went through it, and I said, what it appeared. I said, well, you know what? We're in Jacksonville, Florida. Atlanta, Georgia is a big spot for movies. Tyler Perry's got a studio up there. Georgia is a tax credit state, meaning they do a lot of SAG-AFTRA films. I said, you have real life experience as a security guard. They always need movies with security guards and prison, security actors and stuff like that. Well, this wasn't good enough for my buddy here, who's never done any acting in his life. So he points to the TV. There happens to be King of Queens sitcom with Kevin James on TV. And
right.
my buddy here says, no, I don't want to do all that. I want to be like Kevin James. And that's when I'm tapping out, because I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I can tell I can work with you. I'm an acting coach. I can charge you a very reasonable rate to get you started, but you haven't done one day of acting. You haven't stepped on one foot on front of a stage. You haven't
Mm,
memorized a monologue. You don't have a headshot. And you're telling me that you don't want to do any work. You just want to wake up tomorrow and be Kevin James. And
mm, mm,
Darryl, I'm
mm.
telling you, I don't know if folks that you've encountered in this world of entertainment are like that, or you've met some people like that. But I just wonder, and I guess we don't want you don't want the audience to know how the bunny got out of the hat, right? So in some sense, you want it to be a mystery, but in others, sometimes I get very frustrated that the person who just thinks it's so easy to be a stage actor in particular, or a film actor, they don't realize the hours and hours and hours of work that goes into that, the audition process, uh, getting your voice right, getting your stage presence, the blocking, the costumes, all the people that go into costumes, makeup, and lighting. I just went on a rant there, Darryl, but I just want you to know that I appreciate what you're doing on stage. And as far as your own acting, how did you get the acting bug? Was it in elementary school, high school? How did you get into acting yourself?
Yeah, really young, from a young age. I think the first time I was thinking about 4 years old, I was in Geneva, and they gave me the shepherd boy at the Christmas kind of pageant down at the church, and and I think apparently I really liked being the center of attention as a 4-year-old kid. So I think that was probably the beginning. And when I went through school, I sang a lot. I was very much into singing all sorts of stuff, and I was in the choir for 8 years at the boarding school, and I was a soloist, and they gave me the lead roles in the shows there at the end, and all that sort of stuff, which was great, because that's what I wanted to do. And I realized I was a performer, I was an actor, singer, and so I gave it a go, and luckily, getting big breaks like getting into Les Mis in Australia was the beginning of the journey. And you have to get a big break along the way somewhere, which is meaningful. Look, it is a tough one going about your rant you just did, Mike. Absolutely true. Look, it really is it's a tough biz for sure, and there's a lot of people out there who take it very seriously. You're up against thousands. I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. I used to hire when I was there. We had the office there from 2001 to 2005. Um, all my performers were aspiring actors, Though most of them were opera singers, first and foremost, but a couple of them were also trying to get into the movies and the TV things, and they would constantly audition. And I saw that world firsthand, because I would rehearse in studios, which I remember one at the Debbie Reynolds studio next door. Madonna was auditioning for her world tour, and the dancers for her world tour, and I got to talk to a lot of aspiring actors, and of course I was served by aspiring actors all the time, and just the tension and I wouldn't put that on anyone. I thought the whole thing was horrible. Actually, I was so glad I wasn't playing that game. But there's some people who are okay for that. They've got a tough skin. They're willing to go in and get the constant rejection until hopefully one day their agent rings up and says, "Hey, guess what? You got the part." But you've got to play that game. You've got to be with those people. And look, they're not warm, lovely people. People in Hollywood, they're just so business minded, and they don't care about you, even though they smile and say, "How are you?" and "What do you got for me today?" and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, well, thank you. We'll call you. You kind of, it's a really, really tough business. And I used to just watch it as an observer and think, oh, I don't even want anything to do with it. But the people who are there who've made it did want something to do with it, and they are the 1% who persevered and got through. What you don't hear about is the thousands and thousands who gave it everything they got, threw the kitchen sink at it, and unfortunately had to eventually realize, I'm just not going to make it. It's a tough, tough gig.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. It's a tough business. On a different note, just to kind of balance that a little bit, I always tell people that look, if you don't, if your life situation is not such, or even if you don't want to move to Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, there's a community theater in every town that needs good actors, and there are plenty of people with quote regular lives, the wife and kids or the husband and kids or no kids or whatever, but they're living a normal life and they're doing the community theater and maybe local independent films or student films. So there are plenty of opportunities to broach the creative outlet of acting with
Oh,
a
absolutely.
non-Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. That's just something I tell people too. Is that they say, "But I want to act. I want to act." And I say, "Sure. So why don't you go and find the nearest amateur dramatic company around you and do a show for them and see what it's like?" And of course, that's very intoxicating. Yeah, you're right. The local productions was going on. You're going to meet the most fabulous people you'll ever meet, and they'll become friends for life. And you're both trying. When a group of people come together to put on a play or put on a musical and go through the process of rehearsals, and then finally, the performance for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nights or whatever, and the whole thing about trying to get family and friends along, and it's an incredible situation, and that's where you just love it. That's when you go professional, you find yourself not loving it so much because it's a job and it's different. Yeah. So you hit the point right there. If you want that outlet, if you're a performer and you want to experience that thing of acting, then for God's sake, go and act in a local production somewhere. They need you. They're wanting you to turn up and audition for them. And yeah, that's the time you'll really love the art of it itself, the craft. You'll love it more than you probably would if you were a professional doing it. Waiting on the next job and the next job, and the inherent problems that go with that. So that was great advice, Mike, about taking it local and doing whatever's going on around you.
Yeah, well, when I do acting coaching, Daryl, I ask the new student, do you want to be an actor or do you want to be famous? And
Yeah, exactly. Most people
sometimes,
want to really be famous.
if you want to be famous, go to the Super Bowl and go streaking during halftime and see what happens. You might go
Mm,
to jail for a few years, but you'll get your fame. If you want to be an
that's right.
actor, start taking classes.
Yeah.
Daryl, you've been doing, I believe, corporate entertainment and quite well uh, recently or for several years. Tell me about how you segued into corporate entertainment, producing shows in that realm. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, look, this is the big story, and this is the big story of the book. Because personally, I know there'd be some people sitting there going, what does he mean by corporate entertainment? And I think you guys in America call them industrials, where basically, when you think of corporate entertainment, I'm talking about events industry entertainment. So the events industry is massive in the world, and none so much more than America, which I had 10 years of experiencing at the very height. And it's basically in our the area I'm experienced in is the gala dinner, where so it's awards nights, it's charity fundraising nights, it's wedding receptions, it's corporate companies coming together to celebrate, to wine and dine with their staff and their clients. It's all about all sorts of reasons to sit down and have a 3-course meal. Maybe there's some speeches, and hopefully there's some entertainment. And if there's entertainment, that's where I came in, and you gave me a call, and in particular, in America, it's still there, it's still doing well. It's an act called The Three Waiters, which me and this other guy called Mark Bradley put together in the late '90s, and this is where the story comes in with my book. And it's just an incredible story where we came up with this idea that you put 3 opera singers together. One's an Italian, one's a Frenchman, one's pretending to be a local. So they're pretending to be these characters, and they walk around a dinner that you're sitting down there, and they with their accents and having a chat to every table, so they get to be seen. And so you're hoaxing, basically, you're fooling everybody that you're this European waiter. And then by the time that your entree goes down, we call it main meals here in Australia, but you guys, your main meal, you call an entree. Your entree goes down, they take over with a very funny, interactive 3 tenors. And I know that a lot of people won't know who the 3 tenors are, but Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and Jose Carreras are known as the 3 greatest opera singers of the 20th century. And they came together in the late '90s, the 3 of them together, and did a concert that exploded, and they ended up being the biggest probably act of the '90s. They toured the world 2 or 3 times, and they filled out the biggest sports stadiums, and they were a massive, massive thing. And because of the 3 tenors, we created the 3 waiters, so people could see the juxtaposition there of how we put that together. And that we put on a show as everyone's having their entree, and it's wild. It's a 23 minutes of an incredibly funny journey, and with 3 guys singing incredible opera. And anyway, the first show we did in Australia, the first sort of 5 shows just exponentially exploded. And the phones were ringing. Everyone was calling us saying, I've heard about these 3 opera singers or something. How much are you? Can you come and do my event? And so it just went ballistic, went just stupidly ballistic in Australia. And within 2 years, we realized this is massive. We didn't know. We thought just 1 or 2 a month would be fun, and we ended up doing like sort of 5 or 6 a week pretty quickly. And we took it to the UK, to England in 2000, and we took it to the United States in 2001. And it's a story about taking this idea and taking it to the world. And to date, just so listeners know, well, how successful was it? Well, by 2003, 2004, we knew it was easily the #1 act in the world. And to date, it's done over 14,000 shows. It's been seen in 90, that's 90 countries. So it's a phenomenon, and there's daylight between us and the next act. It's a massive, massive success story. And along the way, it took a lot to set things up in other countries, to form companies, to start again with a country a market that has no idea what you do, and you have to get the word out there. You have to get the message out there. You have to sell it. You have to get the right people involved, and you just see the train starting to get out of the station every time, the momentum build, and the wildfire effect of the ripple effect that happens. So it's an extraordinary story, and that I tell in that book, and then I talk about also how after 2009, actually 11 years, I sold out. I was able to sell out of the whole act, and I developed my own business, Lovegrove Entertainment, and put together 6 or 7 acts here in Australia, and they've done very well as well. And so I've been a successful entrepreneur in the corporate entertainment world, and I was probably around the mid sort of 2000s. I was in Scotland one night in a place called Turnberry, And the guy who had flown us up there, I was doing a three-waiter show. Uh, the guy had flown us up there. He'd just seen the show because he was the event planner of this whole 3-day conference. And he sat down with me and bought me a drink. He said, "Oh, wow, what a show. It's this incredible show. Thank you. Tell me about how the hell did you put that show together? I've never seen anything like it. And I'd love to know how on earth that came together." And so I said, "Oh, okay, well, okay." I was thinking, "You sure you want to know?" He said, "Yes, please, tell me everything. Tell me everything." And so I started telling the story, and every sort of 2 or 3 minutes I go, "I'm not boring you, am I? This is okay, isn't it?" No, keep going. He would say, "Keep going, keep going." So I kept going, it kept going. And it took about 45 minutes to tell the story of how it came to the present day. And he sat there and he went, "You know, I'm a conference organizer. I organize this conference. The last 3 days, we've had 3 or 4 of the biggest speakers in Europe and America come here, and I think it was a big insurance thing or something. Come and speak to us. And I paid, £10,000 for each of them, and they've been great. But what you just told me, the best story I've had for the last 3 days. You need to tell your story to the world." And you need to get out there and tell, because that's one of the most inspirational stories I think I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of speakers. So that's what made me think about one day, telling the story. Of course, by that stage, I was so tunnel visioned in the business and what we were doing that I didn't, I thought, no. I'm too busy doing the three waiters all around the world. And we had, 100 opera singers working for us. So we would sometimes have in the world, 10 shows going on in one day all around the world, 10 different teams out. And so there's a lot to get your head around. I wasn't performing on all of them, obviously. I only ended up performing about 10% of them. But it's always flying, always staying in hotels, and trying to also be a husband and a father at the same time, a growing young family, and flying fast distances all the time, because I live in Sydney. And I'm always going to America, always going to the UK, always going to Asia. And so a lot of flying to be done. But, somehow juggling it all. And that's a little of the story. And then, of course, you've got the 3 big things I've had to deal with were 9/11. 9/11 was a massive bolt to us. We'd only been in America for about 6 months when 9/11 happened. And everything just collapsed. And so there's always how to deal with the fact that everything's going in the right direction, and then bang, you hit a brick wall, and you're faced with a huge problem. And how do you get yourself out of that problem? And then, of course, was the global financial crisis, which was at the time that I was selling the business, and that affected the events industry massively, and still has, I believe. I don't think we've ever truly got over that. And then, of course, now there's COVID, where around the world, everywhere, all the events industry is shattered, like many industries. But the events industry, I would put us at the top pedestal as more than anybody else. There's been very little government support for the industry. There's just been no events to be put on in the last 18 months, and it's a very, very, very tragic situation. So I've actually had to fall back on my school teaching, which I've enjoyed doing. But so it's all about overcoming adversity. It's being passionate. It's being the book's about really realizing that this is not a dress rehearsal, and that's really comes down to your argument about getting vaccinated. This is not a dress rehearsal. We have to get on with it, and now we have to make the right decisions now, and stop thinking about it. Stop thinking I could have done that, I would have done that. Just get out and do it. Make mistakes. Get up, stand up, and start again when you make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. Have a thick skin. Stop saying it's everybody else's fault. It's your thing. You've got to get on with it. You've got to get up there, and it's hard, and you've got to understand it's hard. Don't make excuses about it. It's hard. So get on with it, because that's what successful people and organizations do. They do face tough situations, but they get up and they get on with it. And that's the message I want to say to people who read the book, is that yes, there are great success stories I can talk about, but there's also some real downers in there as well. And my life's about that journey, the up and down journey, that I want to share with everybody, and hopefully inspire people to give it a go. Do those things that they've always thought about, but maybe should now is the time to pull the finger out and really get into it and do what you follow those passions, follow those dreams, but understand that it's not an easy road. And I created a blueprint. I call it, a blueprint for standing up. And I go pretty deep and pretty micro in some areas of the kind of actions you're going to have to take. And there's also is a section on my overall business ethos, and a section of the micro of how to. So that's what that's what the book is really all about.
Darryl, that's great. Hold up the book again, and this time hold it up for about 10 seconds so people have a
Sure.
nice long view of it. Um, it's a nice photograph too. Who took the photo of you for the cover of your book, Darryl?
A great Sydney photographer called Joyce Ong. We set up a little space here, and we took the photos. Nice little yeah, yeah. Gotta get a good photo for your cover of your
And
book.
well, it's important. I actually used the pandemic time to publish my first novel, A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite. It's a gothic horror. And then about 8 months later, I published a Kindle version only film primer for those looking to get into the world of low budget, no budget, and student films. Just some roots of the earth thing. And it was one of those things, kind of similar lesson that you learned, which is, wow, we've got all this time on our hands, and as entertainers, we always want to be dealing with the public, but what can we do that is not with the public? And that's writing. That was the answer, was for me, and it seems like for you, that was the time to get your fingers going on the tapping, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually I can't be careful how I say this. I loved the COVID period here in Australia. Those 3 months. We only went in 3 months. You guys went a little bit longer, I know, but
Yeah.
it was an incredibly creative time for me, and it was tremendous. I didn't want to waste it. I knew that, God, if I'm stuck, we're all stuck at home. Now's the time. I've got to really see what I can do with this time. Do stuff that I've been thinking about doing, but now's the time to do it. I was, recording a CD too. I remember I wasn't really allowed to, but I got in the car a few nights of those months and popped across town to the other side of Sydney and to a recording studio and laid down about 10 tracks. They're big songs from the musical theatres, the theatre shows, like Pity the Child from Chess and
Nice.
Gethsemane from Superstar. This is the moment. And you could get a free copy of the CD with every purchase of this book, by the way. I just thought I'd put that in there. There's
Oh,
a little bit at the
that's a
back.
great deal.
Yeah, it's got a URL. Just at the back is a thank you gift for reading the book. And you go straight there and you can download all 10 tracks.
That's awesome. Tell me
Yeah.
the name of your website again, Darryl. I said it earlier, but you say it this time.
DarrylLovegrove.com, and Darryl is DARRYL, and then Lovegrove, LOVEGROVE.com. And when you're on the website, look for the tab saying author, and that will take you to the page to purchase the book. Yeah.
And just because I know when I make mistakes on the internet, sometimes, remember, folks, there's two L's back to back, because there's an L at the end of Darryl and then the L at the beginning of Lovegrove. So
Yeah,
make sure
that's
you've
right.
got two L's, not just one. And
Yeah.
let me ask you this, Darryl. I had two questions before we wrap it up today, and they're kind of about you and your team, the three waiters, booking the show in new countries. Here's the two-headed question. So I'm going to say both questions first to allow you time to marinate on your answers. So the first question would be: was there a country that was more receptive to the show and or easier to deal with than you expected? Like a country that you
Yeah.
thought, man, this is going to be a challenge, this is going to be tough in an audience. And here's the second question: was there not to pick on anybody, but was there a country that you thought, oh, this is a piece of cake, they're going to love this, they're going to be lining up outside the door, and the press will be great, and everything will be fantastic, and we'll get some great media coverage, and I can't wait to get there. And then when the show came to be, it wasn't what you expected, or maybe there were challenges or weather obstacles, or something happened, something funny on the way to the theater, type of thing.
Yeah,
So those are
yeah.
the two questions, and you can take those in either order that you prefer.
We learned very quickly that we'd accidentally created a show that worked every time for everyone. We've never had a Dutch show where people are sitting there going, "Can you please leave?" Because you've got to remember, we're not in a theatre. We're a captive audience in a hotel ballroom or a special event venue somewhere, overlooking the sea,
Right.
or some hotel ballroom, in the middle of the city, or some big winery, some big room to wine where they have events. It's just a show which accidentally works every time. Now, saying that, and obviously in the very early days, especially coming out of Australia, we were being flown up to Singapore and Hong Kong quite a lot, and China, and Kuala Lumpur quite a lot to do events. And those first ones we were a bit nervous about, but they, the people who go to those events speak English very well, and so therefore they totally understood the dialogue. And we changed a few things in the script. We localized one or two things for the jokes to work better. But oh no, they laughed plenty at all the right places. The one thing I always remember, and it made me just so, I laughed and laughed, and I thought it was brilliant, was we had one gig at the Sydney Opera House, actually, but it wasn't for an Australian audience. It was a group of visiting Japanese delegation for a big conference. And the one country we knew that, not the one of the Asian countries that knew that actually didn't have a good hold of English was the Japanese. They don't actually have a great hold of English. It's very kind of minimum. And we thought, and they said to us, "Listen, can we please use a translator?" And we went, "Oh God, okay, yeah, probably have to, because otherwise they're just not going to get the humour." But how's that going to work? How can we do the show when we've stopped? We've got the Italian and the Frenchman. One part's in this part of the room around these tables here. This one's around these tables here. There's a spotlight on us, a follow spot on us, and we're having the big funny piece of dialogue we have in the middle of the show, where the Italian's having a go at the Frenchman, the Frenchman's having a go at the Italian. Who's the more cultural? Who's the more passionate? And all that kind of stuff. It's hilarious, and it works brilliantly every time. But we thought, how's that going to work with the translation? And well, excuse me, we would say our line, and then the Japanese interpreter at the corner of the room would just repeat what we said, but in Japanese. And so we're like, oh, this is going to sort of spoil the timing of the jokes and the punchlines. It's not going to. And I thought, that's just going to be terrible. But we would say the line and wait while the translation was in. And I'll never forget that when the first punchline came up, I can't remember what the line is, and bang, come the punchline, and we wait for the translation. And I thought it will just be met with this eerie silence. The whole place erupted. The whole place erupted with screaming laughter. And we realized, oh my God, how fabulous. And it's working with the translation, even though you're missing the timing and the whole thing, the normal comedy elements. It works with translation. And that was that was really, really cool. And so it inspired us, and we just kept on going, knowing that it was working. And so we had handing up these delayed applauses and laughing, about 10 times. It was a very funny night. And of course, they love the opera. That part translates wherever you go. So the answer is, it was one of those shows, The Three Waiters, which just worked everywhere. And I've been literally all over the world, all throughout the United States. It works in Atlanta as much as it did in New Orleans, as much as it did in the Plaza Hotel in New York City, as much as it did in the Napa Valley and California. It doesn't matter where you were. We even been to Colombia. Oh, a really cool thing happened was we got it translated into Spanish. We got a Latino show out of Bogota called Los Tres Meseros. And when I saw the first video of them singing, doing our show in the dialogue, and the Italian and the Frenchman having a go at each other while they're speaking Spanish, it was fantastic. It was so fantastic. And the laughing, it was exactly the same. It was like they were badly dubbing the English one. You know what I mean? It was exactly
Right.
the same show, exactly the same impact, but they were actually speaking another language. it was so good to watch. I knew exactly what they were saying, even though I had no understanding what they were saying. You know what I mean? Because I can't speak Spanish,
Yes.
but I knew that they were translating, our lines word for word. Making sure that it was all there, and that was very exciting. Yeah.
It's got to be a thrill and a rush to have a catalyst for you to travel the world is a show that you've created and to work with your friends. And I am happy to hear that there was a Frenchman character, being French myself, so that's always
Yeah.
nice to hear that. And the French and the Italian arguing reminds me of me in Rhode Island for all my years in Rhode Island, because there was a very Italian based neighborhood up there in Providence, Rhode Island. um,
Yeah.
so what's next for you, Darryl? What can people can go to your website and your Instagram page and find out what would you like people here on the Doomer Bloomer podcast and simulcast. I'll have this on subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. What would you like people to walk away from our conversation and check out more about you and the book, and the CD comes with a book? What would you
Well,
like
look.
to leave people with today, my friend?
Well, I would imagine most of you guys, I know you'd have people all around the world, but most of you would be from North America, United States. So I'm not going to the United States in any hurry, and you're not coming down here in any hurry. So look, the chance of us meeting up for the next year is very, very it's nil. With the closure of the borders everywhere. So look, uh, I guess my message is have a look at the website. This book, I think, not all of you, obviously, but if you are aspirational and you're looking for something to sort of pick you up, and if you just want to read a rollicking great story, for one thing, that's the first section. It's the autobiographical section. And then if you want to take it further with mindset, you want to think about your own lives, about, you know, taking risks, and actually rather getting from the mindset of, yeah, I must do that, I've always thought about that, is to think, what do I have to do to actually now take action, build momentum, have the resilience, and have the self-belief to realize the dreams and passions that you might have. Then buy the book. And I think you're going to enjoy the book very much. I've had fantastic feedback from people who have read it. There's some great stories in there as well. I've littered it with little short stories from my career of very funny things which have happened on stage. And there's some real good, and also a bit one or two tragic things there as well. But look, I think it's from an autobiographical point of view, it's a what we call a rollicking yarn. And but there's lots of business stuff in there as well that I think you'd get a lot out of. So I think that's really what I can share with you all today. You're going to enjoy it a lot. DarrylLovegrove.com. And please get in touch with me and let me know what you thought of the book. I'd love to know, love to hear.
Darryl, just real quick, as you were speaking, it makes me think of that. I believe it was a Teddy Roosevelt quote. It's the man in the arena, or the woman in the arena, which is battered and bloodied and sweaty and facing the crowd and the critics. That's the person who matters, and I feel like your book is going to be. It is a catalyst for people that are kind of hedging their bets about life and wondering what they should do or if they should do anything. And especially with this 400-pound gorilla of a pandemic we've been dealing with, that's almost like another dog ate my homework excuse for people not to fulfill their life's destiny. But get that vaccine, um, take on the world, take on these challenges, because as you said, time is fleeting. We don't have 2 or 3 lives that we can use and then say, well, the next round of reincarnation I'll do something productive. You got to get
Yeah.
it now while you can, right?
Yeah, done now. Yeah, you do, absolutely. It's actually very exciting, the future. It's very grim at the moment. No one's happy. Everyone's miserable at the moment. I get it. But at the same time, I think actually the future is incredibly exciting. Exciting books, exciting time. These with technology, it's all crap at the moment. I think it hasn't helped us at the moment very much with our mindset, but I think it's going to in the future. I could be wrong, but I'm excited about the future. By the way, Michael, also thought that it's also available on Amazon, so you don't even have to go to the website, it is available on Amazon. Hey, I'm a big fan of a guy called Andrew Yang, who's just run for the New York mayoral office, and he was a Democrat thing. That's another great book, The War on Ordinary People. That's a book I recommend as well, just to let you know what's happening in the future. And he's got a fantastic idea called UBI, Universal Basic Income, and along with that is another book I recommend, Stephanie Kelton's The Deficit Myth. Those are two books I think that are going to have huge effect on what's happening in the future, and they will be both seen as very much visionaries. So that's something that I always like to recommend as well.
If I'm not mistaken, Darryl, I
Yeah.
think Andrew Yang was speaking up on behalf of pro wrestlers' rights to get unionized, like stage actors or film
Yes.
actors. So I know who
Yeah,
Andrew
that was
Yang is.
yeah, that was
I
one of
know
his
who
things.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of pro wrestling rants on subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. I get very heated when I talk about pro wrestling, and I just went to a wrestling show last night here in Florida. We have a Daly's Place AEW Wrestling. It's kind of a nice setup, Darryl, because they have an outdoor amphitheater that's covered. It was a rainstorm last night, but the sides of the arena are open, so the fresh air is circulating, and there's enough
Mm-hmm.
empty seats where you can still socially distance and all that. Um,
Mm.
and like I said, I've been vaccinated, so I feel more or less safe going out. But I appreciate your time so much today, and thanks for being here with us at 6 o'clock in the morning. Your time is when we started, and the Doomer Bloomer podcast special guest, Darryl Lovegrove of Darryl Lovegrove Entertainment, the book, the CD, all the wonderful things he's doing. This is Mike Messier of MikeMessier.com. Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. I also have my book on Amazon as well, A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite. Darryl, it's been a pleasure. I hope that when this thing clears, we meet up in person. I'd love to see your performance in person and talk to you more in the future. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks everybody.
Okay, thanks everyone. This is the Doomer Bloomer podcast. Have a great day.